everybody. Welcome once again to Corrections, and we're gonna get right into it. We did a joke about how Big Bird got the COVID vaccine, and the punchline was he's now the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers, and we then showed a graphic of Big Bird wearing a football helmet. Football helmets are for safety. That is the role they play. And some of you correctly pointed out it would not be that safe if the bar was between the top and bottom of your beak. I called Big Bird a Muppet, and some people said he's not a Muppet, but I'm gonna die on that hill. I think he's a Muppet. Prove I'm wrong. We had another joke about how Oscar the Grouch got the Hep C vaccine. And I was told that while there is a vaccine for hepatitis A and B, there is not, to this point, a hepatitis C vaccine. They have been trying to develop one, but I guess they can't figure out how to get the tracking chip to work. And so the FDA won't approve it because they're like, if we can't track the people who get it, what's the point? I try very hard not to name drop during corrections. And this is not a correction, this is just a celebrity story. I met Big Bird. Carol Spinney, the original Big Bird, rest in peace, Carol Spinney, came to SNL, did an update feature with Carol Spinney, and the most fascinating part about the whole thing was how Carol Spinney reads his lines, because he can't see the cue cards because he's in a giant bird costume. And he had a pen light that he held in his mouth, and a tiny clipboard where he was reading it. And at one point, live, I heard the clipboard drop. And later, Eric Kenward, who's a writer and producer at SNL, said that watching the whole thing was like watching someone operate a Civil War submarine. This one, sometimes this happens on the show. I said Necco wafers. People told me Necco wafers were discontinued. I corrected myself. And then a slew of people said Necco wafers were discontinued for 2 years. And then a different company bought Necco and is now, you can get Necco wafers. I also did not know this. Necco stands for a New England confectionery company. And they were bought by Spangler, which stands for Southern Pennsylvania Artisanal Nougat Gums and Licorices. So Necco wafers are still available. The delicious taste of the body of Candy Christ. Came back. I said anime cartoon. I was told that's redundant. Anime and cartoon mean the same thing. It would be like saying a nerdy anime fan. I pronounced Joseph Goebbels, Joseph Goebbels. I apologized on behalf of getting that wrong to the entire Goebbels family. And someone wrote an interesting fact that Joseph Goebbels doesn't have any family left to apologize to. His at the end of the war. Ooh. That is not for this. We have been talking about the fairy tale, The Elves and the Shoemaker. You know the classic fairy tale where the shoemaker goes to bed and the elves make the shoes. We were talking about it in reference to the fairy tale Shoemaker and the Elves, which is when the elves who work at this show write bad jokes, Shoemaker shoves them out the window. I referred to it as a fable and was told it's not a fable, it's a fairy tale. Fables have to have a moral, but I think if you asked any of the elves who have written here, they would say the moral of the story is steer clear of Shoemaker. Someone else has said, you shouldn't say throw out the window, you should say defenestrate. Defenestrate means to throw out the window, which I believe, but if anyone ever uses it in a sentence around you, you have my permission to throw them out the window. This is one of the fun things about doing corrections is you sometimes do some digging on words. Defenestrate, I looked it up, and they said the most famous example of defenestration was in 1618, when two imperial regents were thrown out the window of the Prague Castle, an event that started the 30-Year War. Here's the most fascinating thing. Neither of the guys who were thrown out of the window died. They landed in a moat. And I just feel like if you're going to start a 30-year war over it, they should have died. I just feel like, I feel bad for the soldier like 17 years in who was like, why are we doing this again? And they're like, oh. I threw Willem and Jakob out the window. And he's like, oh yeah, that's a hell of a way to go. And it's like, oh no, they didn't die. Interesting fact about the 30-Year War, named at the beginning. They said, I guess they said, all right, we're going to give this 30 years. We obviously have a lot of disagreements, but if we can't sort it out after 30 years, we all go home. This bummed me out because we're writing jokes, and we wrote a joke about guys from New Jersey settling New Jersey, and they were kind of like Sopranos-y guys, and I pitched the joke, hey, look at this farmland, let's plant some gabagool. And a bunch of people here, oh, you jackals will be thrilled to know how many people said, well, you don't plant gabagool. And I'm like, I know that. That's the joke. And they said, you're going to hear it from the jackals. And guess what? I heard it from the jackals. I'm a little under the weather. I feel like now that kids are going back to school, they come home with colds. But I will say that when I am under the weather, I have long known a sort of homeopathic cure from my friend Andy Samberg. So let's see if he's there. This is his homeopathic cure, if he answers. Hey, do Robert Smith. Boys don't cry. Thanks. That's the cure. Sometimes you just, you wake up on Friday morning, you start scrolling through the corrections on corrections, and you're just gutted by an error you made. I've lived my entire life thinking that David and Richard Attenborough were one person. They're two different people. David Attenborough is the naturalist, and Richard Attenborough is his brother, who was in Jurassic Park, The Great Escape. Just thought they were the same person. Ashamed. Must have been quite a sibling rivalry between a man who committed his life to covering the natural world in all its wonder and his brother who made a dinosaur movie. He must have been so happy to tell him he was making a big budget movie about dinosaurs. He's like, oi, David, I'm assuming. I mean, they have fancy voices for like, their narration and, when they do films. But it's like, oi, David, did Mum tell you I'm doing a new film? He's like, oh, what's that, Dickie? I say, yeah, it's about a bunch of people on an island with some very interesting wildlife. And he's like, oh, you should ask me then, Dickie. I know quite a bit about wildlife. No, I don't think you know about this. It's about dinosaurs. Yeah, what I want to do is a show about otters. Newts. We showed a photo of Notre Dame because the joke was the Catholic Church was going to have to auction off the Notre Dame. And we did a Zillow ad. Can we show that real quick, Alex? And a bunch of people said, that's the spire collapsed. And they're right. I would say the spire famously collapsed. I feel like as far as top 3 spire collapses in the last decade. Some people think we're doing this for the full audience. I assure you that we're not. But you know, more people are coming to corrections. I mean, it's all crew and staff, but it's a hot ticket. And people who come to the show are gutted that they are not allowed to stay. Because I think they come on Thursday assuming they get to stay for corrections, which they don't. And it was hard because their disappointment is sometimes palpable. Like tonight, Taylor Swift was our guest, and she walked out, and it was just silence. Because they were like, where's corrections? This is, I don't want to be, I don't know. I don't want to like tisk. Blue humor, but someone wrote a filthy joke. And we I hate to be the police of the corrections comment section, but we have to be better than that. We did a joke about a grandfather telling his kids how when he was younger, he took a date to see Ben-Hur, and he took, he and the date, obviously, we implied, we did not use filthy language. We implied that they maybe, hooked up, or whatever they called it back then. And someone wrote, this was their joke. This is the first half of the joke, because the second half is just too filthy. Was Grandpa's date annoyed he went down on her during Ben-Hur? And that's just not the kind of language we use here. And if you think I'm gonna read a punchline to a joke, was Grandpa's date annoyed he went down on her during Ben-Hur? I mean, in what world would I share that with the people who spend time with me here? I mean, shame on you. See me next week.